right, we're live with another Rabble Rants. It's Friday, January the 24th, and it is a fucking hard time in politics. We're going to try to unpack some of it. Obviously, we're going to talk about Trump's executive orders. Again, this is mostly Canadian content most of the time, but there's a lot that Trump is doing right now that we obviously can't ignore because we feel like it will be replicated in some form if we're not prepared, or whether we're prepared or not. We'll see. There's other things we're definitely going to talk about, though. We're going to talk about what's going on in Palestine, specifically the West Bank. We're going to talk about Amazon in Quebec, back to their union busting, back to as if they've ever stopped. The CBC, again, this time they get caught censoring and they have to admit it. We're going to unpack that a little bit. Joe's going to help us unpack specifically some AI news and Elon. I don't know much about it, but it's horrifying. I did read other things about AI, and it's all ugly, but we'll get there. And we're also looking at possibly an early election here in Ontario. That's where Joe and I are reporting in from. My name is Justin McLean, and I'm usually the host of Blueprints of Disruption. But every Friday, I jump on here with Joe. Sometimes we have other guests, and we rant about these news items that have us most riled up. If you're watching and you want to put in the comments something that you think we're missing, and we've got time, maybe we'll talk about that as well. Joe, tell people who you are before we talk about Doug Ford.
Absolutely. My name is Joe. I'm here in the Ottawa area, fellow activist that I like to go out and as well as many people would know, I have been documenting people as well as events, including both on the left progressive side, both LGBTQS as Palestine, as well as also counter from convoy and the remains of the convoys from Wellington Street all the way up to their activities and protesting events. So this and ever since then, I also was co-hosting with Dina on our Dina Live. Obviously, that show right now is still on pause, and hopefully we'll be able to resume. And yes, now I'm joining every Friday here on Rabble.
And I very much appreciate Joe's company and knowledge. He really saved me one of those weeks and has been very instrumental in helping me get this up. It's also therapeutic for us to get on here and just really go off on some of these news items. And
Be honest, we all need to blow off a little bit of steam once in a while.
we do. But then we try to end it with a little more hopeful stuff. We have disruptive updates at the end, and we'll also try to provide as many practical tips for other shit disturbers out there to just kind of be better equipped, better prepared, and all of the knowledge that we get, that we distribute, comes from a lot of other people as well. So we're going to share some Canadian content as we talk about some of the topics. But yes, leaning on folks as well to do this work. I'm going to start by, I mean, we have been preparing for this surprise spring election or early election in Ontario. I feel like for months it's been rumored. But just as about
Yeah.
we're all receiving $200 checks, the writing is like clear. It's not official. It hasn't been announced, but every outlet is reporting not just that we are going to have an early election in Ontario, but that Ford has already picked the dates. Looks like the writ will drop on Monday, which is January the 27th, and election day will be February 27th.
But
I've been...
we know why, though.
Why, Joe?
We all know why. What I mean by we know why it's going to be happening so soon, because let's be honest here, it's fast. Like, he's dropping it next week, and we're going to be hitting the polls because he knows he needs to have his election done before the federal election. This is his only chance, and this is his best chance. I cannot disagree with the odds and the view that he sees. That's not wrong in regards to the assessment. Looking strong because of his rhetoric against Donald Trump, in regards to being that, like, no, you can't take Canada. Canada belongs to us.
His hat.
And so if you can go ahead with your tariffs, we'll just turn off your power. So he's saying all the things that are kind of resonating right now because the guy's which is making people forget this is still Doug Ford, who has done all sorts of terrible, terrible things. And also, he's banking on the, you know, he could try to spin this in a look, I'm tough on Trump. This is what you're voting for at the ballot box. These other people, you don't even know them, they're not going to be tough. And if anything, this may also help the federal election, because if he gets everybody to the ballot before, people tend not to like voting too often. So they might not vote in the second election. Conservatives always will vote in the second election, but others may.
Yeah, low voter turnout is usually a bad thing for, progressives. I don't even the scare quotes don't even unpack enough there, but yeah, he's always planned, I think, for an early election, and he is looking to the feds, especially in Ontario here, for folks that don't live here. I don't know if it's the same in every province, but we really do have a tendency to vote also for the opposite party in power federally. I guess we're just like never happy, and we always think if we just switch from red to blue, everything will fix itself again. And whatever causes that phenomenon, it's real, and it low voter turnout is going to definitely happen on February 27th. Good fucking luck. I ran a by-election in cold, cold, cold weather once, and the voter turnout was in the teens. It was awful, and that's hard, like, and I think of any progressives out there that are probably going to get involved, like feel the need to get involved in these elections, and how exhausted they probably already are. And I feel for them. It's a tough time politically. We said that at the top of the show, but you add elections on top of it, and it just zaps a lot of energy, a lot of space. Who knows what they're going to have us talking about on the campaign trail, like versus what we should be talking about. Maybe, the people behave a little differently on the campaign trail now, and not allow politicians to set the agenda so much.
Yeah.
Like have their photo ops and allow them to decide what will be the driver. I think the people are going to have a big say in that. But that's to be told. But he's definitely also trying to capitalize on Trump's popularity, I think.
Yeah.
He's saying he needs a stronger mandate in order to fight these tariffs. So, like you say, he's the tough guy up against Trump. That's what he wants to appear as. And yeah, he's hedging his bets here. And
absolutely, he's the gangster trying to push back on the bully from the south.
Yeah. Yeah, the NDP, their line, though, they think he's trying to get this election in before the RCMP completes their investigation into his dealings around the Greenbelt. So, I mean, only he knows, I suppose, and maybe his caucus and his advisors, but there's a lot of speculation as to why we might be going to an election. And this isn't all that early. If it's in February, we're talking about this 4 months early. It would have been in June, had everything gone his way.
Both
But
could be true.
Yeah, but it really pisses me off that he is trying to sell us on the fact that he needs a strong mandate when he has been telling us he's had a clear, strong mandate from Ontarians the whole time, even though we know that's bullshit, right? Because he didn't win the popular vote. It was a false majority, but he does hold a majority. He has even streamlined a lot of the I say that in a positive way. He's like removed a lot of the safety nets within the legislature, and a lot of the feigned democracy that's there. He's, quite often there's not even public consultation. Like, he really can push through anything he wants right now in the legislature and not even have to debate it.
Yeah. He's got the majority. He's got no problems being able to push anything through.
No. Do you think people are buying that line that he needs a stronger mandate than that? Like, a mandate being...
Yes.
Sometimes it's just like a vote. These politicians speak as though mandates are, I'm going to do A, B, and C. Is that what you want? And everyone said, yeah. But that's not what happens. Everyone's wishy-washy on the campaign trail. You basically are picking a person. You've given them whatever you want, buddy. Right? That's our democracy. Yeah. 4 years, blank check, do whatever you want. That's his mandate. So according to them, you couldn't have a stronger mandate than the majority. I guess you want a super majority, but he's had no trouble with any bill at all. The only trouble he's had is with cops and, you know, your ombudsman and a lot of people that are fighting against him. So,
And supermajority is not really in Canada.
I
I
think
mean, it's definitely a thing in the U.S., but Canada not so much. I mean, you can have a majority where you just have a majority, but still, I mean, all you might get is a different question period, but you're still have the majority to pass any bills and hammer it through. So
yeah.
it's, you know, as long as you've got your majority, you're good to go.
I'm just you mentioned how many bad things Ford has done. Well, you didn't mention what they were because we don't have time for that. That is like a
No.
series on its own. There is the OFL, the Federation of Labor, have a great website that has tracked Ford, so you can sort by year, you could sort by issue, and then it will literally give you the gamut of the policies he's passed, and typically even links you back to an article that will unpack it a little bit for you. It's a great tool. It's a little overwhelming at this point. I haven't visited in almost a year. Uh, I hope it's still there. I'm pointing people to nothing, but it is incredible the amount of damage she's done. It's we just dropped an episode on Blueprints of Disruption this week. It's an interview with Fatima Saeed of the Narwhal, who, you know,
Yes.
exclusively focus on environmental issues like energy specific, and she does the Ontario portfolio. And, you know, she's been on Ford from day one in terms of what he's done to pave the way to allow him to do the bigger policy items and, you know, the greenbelt grabs. And in the episode that we have, it's on his relationship with Enbridge. So, you know, he's overruling the only regulator we have in the province, and he's just passing, you know, pipeline infrastructure costs onto the consumers while he's complaining about a carbon tax. So Fatima has a lot more dirt and reasons to be worried about his relationship there. But again, the developers, they're not, you can't talk about Ford with the developers. They're also part of the story, but we're not going to unpack that here because, you know, there's like 40 minutes of it sitting on the Blueprints catalog. So, which you can find here on YouTube. Actually, I don't know where you're all viewing from at this point. We're streaming to Joe's Twitch. We're on Facebook Live in 2 places. So, welcome to everybody watching from everywhere. But I do have more bad things that Ford did. I'm going to just talk about the,
Yeah, before that,
yes.
to the election point, I just remembered last night as I was sitting down watching a little TV before going to bed, Doug Ford commercial came across for the election, and I was streaming Tubi, so not Tubi, but Pluto,
Yeah.
and yeah, as I'm sitting there watching Little Star Trek, because who doesn't? And suddenly a Doug Ford commercial comes across. I'm like, he hasn't dropped the writ yet, and already the commercials are starting.
Well,
So
they never stopped, right? If you're,
yeah,
I don't watch TV with commercials a lot, but I hear it
same.
on in the car constant.
Hmm.
You know, your Ministry of Education is paying for education, paying for ad space to tell you how great of a job they're doing. Meanwhile, you've
Yeah,
got your kids in school, you know exactly what's going on there. So, um, yeah, the amount of things they waste money on, and this is another one of them. They have hired private investigators and lawyers to snoop around safe injection sites in Toronto. This could be happening in other cities, but it's the advocates on the ground in Toronto that really flagged everybody. Zoe Dodd and Pastor Helwig, Pastor Maggie from St. Stephen in the Fields over in the Kensington area, you know, saw some people snooping around. They had that PI look, you know, you can kind of smell them. And they were able to kind of confirm because they were starting to question people in the neighborhood. And sure enough, you know, the media got a whiff. Well, the Trillium. I don't know if you can pull that up, Joe, for folks, because the Trillium, it's like the only person who's reported on this. But Sylvia Jones, it didn't need much digging. She actually responded to him and fully confirmed that, yep, they have hired private investigators to gather evidence on the impact of the safe injection sites in Toronto. Now, this pisses us off, or pisses me off. for many, many reasons. One of them being they have already passed legislation and ordered the shutdown of 10 of these safe injection sites, that save 22,000 people from overdoses and drug poisonings, rather. But they've already done that. And now they're telling us they're collecting evidence. The reason they're collecting evidence is because there's a lawsuit. So one of the ways that folks doing the harm reduction work are fighting back is to launch a charter challenge. And Doug Ford needs to defend himself in that challenge, and Sylvia Jones, the health minister. And so, yes, so your tax dollars are paying for people to snoop around safe injection sites, which are supposed to be private. These folks don't need to know that there's like detectives and folks hanging around. And the evidence has already been gathered. There's been research done. There's a professor at U of T that has gone over 13 years of data, police data and all of that, and found that there is no correlation. In fact, there have been no changes in crimes in those areas. There's a change in policing. Those areas are then over-policed. But based on the policing that they have, there's nothing. And that data's already there. So who knows what they're collecting, but it's had a reverberating effect on the community on top of these closures. You have to imagine you've got advocates right now who are wondering what their legal status is. I don't mean like documentation wise. We'll get to those kinds of topics later, but will they be charged for providing services, and what the impacts of all of these new changes and the criminalization of drug use and the way that it's going is going to impact them in their work. And so on top of this, yes, private investigators. Like, Joe, could they be not more pieces of shit to drug users?
It is. It is, and it's always the how can I put it? It's a problem that people don't want to see, so let's just make it a crime and hide it. Not address it, not fix it, not deal with what caused the issue, the challenges of it, trying to address the causes that cause people to get into issues of addiction, and as well as helping people get out of it by just giving them means to safely do this. Help them out while they're keep them safe while they're still in the throes of it, because again, people only leave addiction one way: when they're ready. Can't force them, can't do anything else. If you're going to try to force them out, it's just going to keep them in there longer. But I still think it's what they want. I think this is more the feature. They just want to do arrests, and as we talked about previously, I am ready to see, and maybe this is going to be something that they're going to be doing in the next mandate, which is we need to get tougher on crime. We're going to need more jails, and they're going to start talking about privatized jail. I wouldn't be surprised if we start hearing about that. Maybe not during the election, but as soon as he gets his new stronger mandate.
Oh yeah, the stronger mandate that won't mention privatized healthcare and all of, well, we have privatized healthcare, but yeah,
privatized jails.
It's ridiculous how they get to frame this no matter which way, and it suits them. But yeah, so a shout out to the neighborhood group who actually are launching the lawsuit against the Ford government. The Ford government's also spent years making it more difficult for people to do that as well, to sue for harms and whatnot caused by lack of policy or even by policy. So it's an uphill battle. I'm glad somebody's fighting it on that front. I know folks will be fighting it on another front because, yeah, it's 10 in Toronto, and I know that there's others throughout the province that are set to close, I believe in March. I'm sorry if I get that wrong. But that's going to be devastating to that community. So, but Lord knows that will not be an election item. So no. I think, energy tends to be a make it or break it. Maybe we'll have to see.
Maybe it should. I mean, first of all, it's, we see it for the horrible thing it is. You're shutting down these centers, so the people that were dependent on it are now going to have nothing. They're going to be dumping into the neighborhoods, the very thing that people are going to obviously not be happy about. They're going to try to spin it in regards to, look, all this increased crime and drug usage, as opposed to, no, you made this problem. you should be trying to fix this problem by giving them, the spaces that you made it difficult. You're creating this is all your fault. Maybe we just make sure we get that messaging out.
Yep. Yeah, that's what people are going to have to spend their energy on, because I think it's tough on like who to vote for, who to pledge for, but surely you could be at the forefront of like pushing issues to the talking points. I even said to my partner, I've run twice in this riding. I'm like, I could just put my name on the ballot. It costs you nothing to actually get on the ballot. You need 100 signatures, which is kind of a pain, but you can do it. It's easy. And I was like, just so I can get into the debates. That's it. I'm not going to campaign. I don't want to win. I just want to be able to face off against Carolyn Mulrooney or Scott Davidson, which I have before, but not Carolyn Mulrooney. I've not got myself a Mulrooney, but that was good fun to do that. And it's a way to just at least get stuff that should be talked about out there, because these folks are just going to be ready with fucking talking points. And otherwise the election becomes useless. But yeah, let's transition to over to Quebec. We'll try to branch out through Canada. We're very Ontario-centric here, but we try not to be. Just Ontario's politics are just damn awful. We're going to have Kim Seaver on next week to talk about Alberta politics a little bit. So we won't always be. And so on to Quebec and Amazon. Everyone hates Amazon or loves to hate Amazon. They're union busting again. They say they're not, but they are closing all of their warehouses and, distribution centers. There's a few places that are closing. One of them had just recently unionized. And there's not a whole lot of Amazon facilities in North America that are unionized. Two, everyone knows about the one in New Jersey there, JFK 8. Famously Chris Smalls helped organize that and spread the word about Amazon's union busting tactics. But yeah, Joe, 1,700 people are going to lose full-time jobs, and 250 seasonal jobs will be axed. They say they're going to fill, like everyone orders from Amazon. What are they going to do? We've kind of got that a little bit up here, where they enlist, corner stores and other shops to be their distribution centers, be their pickup drop-off places, and use other third parties who don't have unionized employees is the theory. But yeah, I mean, I've seen people cancel their Prime, another wave. I mean, we've had lots of reasons to do it, but
it's kind of one of those. I'm not surprised at the same time. So yeah, it's Jeff Bezos, but it's also just the aggressiveness that corporations have to make sure that there is no union, and the fact that they're able to have that kind of power to do that is very disheartening. I haven't heard any response from the NDP, because usually the NDP is very good in regards to that. Now, not to say they haven't. So I'm not to say that they haven't said anything about this to call this out.
I did read a Matthew Green statement. He came down on them and was like, "This is unacceptable. This is clearly union busting." And obviously, they're Labor president. But yeah.
Excellent, and that's a good thing to get out there, because this is exactly what it is. It is labor busting. The regular things of the regular telltale signs are there. Shutting down the companies so that they have no presence there. The entire province, and to be able to do a flex of it, we make the entire province go. And then the most common thing and the common trick for them to also get rid of the union is outsource it. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Just outsourcing it, sending it out, all the work to outsource companies to make sure that they take care of all the work, so that if there's union issues, it's going to be down there. And if they got unions and it becomes expensive, well, we'll just end that contract, go find another one. And then, especially if you start ending up owning those particular channels, it becomes a bit of an issue in regards to, as to, it becomes impossible for labor to be able to actually ever do anything for this, because now they've detached themselves from the work. So there's a lot, like these guys have a lot that they need to do. And it's going to, I'm not sure what they're going to be able to do to change that. Like I'm not sure where in the government do you start to be able to do that.
Is that the Rabble one?
I got the Rabble one now. Yeah.
Yeah, just again, shout out to the Canadian content that's being created and blocked everywhere. Rabble actually has a few links if you go to this article here, and they'll link you back to some other union efforts that are going on in Canada as well. Like there's a facility out in Alberta that has tried its darndest to try to unionize. Maybe Kim can give us an update on that next week, but their typical tactics that they've used are anti-union literature is very common, but surveillance. They'll spend a whole lot of money on surveillance. They'll start to trespass workers who come back when they're not on shift to try to catch people. At the bus stop, notoriously, is the place that they tried to shut down when they were trying to unionize in New York. And, during a shift change, you show up at the bus stop where most people take so you can talk to them and have conversations, salt the workplace. So they're on to that and they try that. They also, when it comes time to do a union vote or it gets about that time, suddenly the list of workers is inflated. So it's all these strategic hires or fake hires in order to dilute the radicalized workers that have been exposed to the Marxists on set. So, they'll do anything. And I guess in Quebec, none of it worked. One of the facilities unionized. It's usually just a matter of time for the rest to, and they shut them all down. Like they'll probably lose money. Like if you're just looking at Quebec alone, they're going to lose money having to contract this all out to all these facilities. They'll probably lose customers because you got 1,700 families that have just been fucked by them. And so it doesn't matter. It's because it's contagious. It's the contagion. They have to cut it off. Plus that even if they say it's not union busting and we all say it's union busting, then it tells everybody else that, oh, this is what happens when you unionize. All the jobs just disappear. And they make that a reality. They make that argument a fucking reality, which makes our job harder.
Yeah. It is. This is where, when you have, government legislation that, things like, being sent back to work through and just not having protection for unions that we used to have, this is what you get. This is, they're able to freely do that. And yeah, exactly. 1,700 people are now unemployed. You also, my only sort of caveat I'd say is you did this in a very, very socially progressive area. Quebec is, of many things, is very socially progressive. Not quite to the level of France. They haven't set the city on fire. They only do that for hockey.
I was like that.
Yeah, with the events. Yeah, it is a very progressive one, and they're not going to forget.
Do you think there'll be a big backlash against Amazon there? Because I don't want it to be an anti-union backlash. If there's anywhere that can withstand, and sniff it out and know what a spade for a spade, it's the folks in Quebec.
I could see, excuse me, what I could see occurring, and I could see this being a very Quebec thing, is there's going to be a pushback, and if it's done just right, there could be a strong enough pushback that Quebec will turn this into their Quebec nationalism thing, if delivered well, and they'll just fire off a French competitor to Amazon, and that's it. They're like, nope, we're going to now have Quebec Amazon, or Quebecazon, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And they're just going to run with that.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah, no. So if anybody's figuring out any backlash, you can cancel your Prime, stop ordering Amazon, because, watching him at the inauguration surely made your blood boil as well. Zuckerberg, all our usual suspects were there. Elon was there. I think the best... he did a fucking Nazi salute, okay? I think I have to acknowledge the fucker did a Nazi salute, okay? But, that's such a huge distraction. Yes, it's awful. It's worth demonizing him. I have a lot of reasons to hate him, too. It must be triggering for so many people. Yes, all of that. Yes. But I don't really want to spend a whole lot of time because, there are actual policies and things that they are
Yeah.
doing that's more important. So, Joe, before we get into what Trump's doing, what
Yeah.
else can we be upset with Elon for?
Yes. Well, we can go into that. So, one thing in particular, this account came up on Substack recently, about 2 weeks ago, and um, it's called the Concerned Bird. And I'll even post the URL to everybody here to go look if they want. And I'm going to share this. What I'm doing. Anyways, so this particular article on there came up. And it was about, and this was a kind of a blatant accusation by an anonymous employee or former employee of, a former ex-employee, Twitter at the time, who was there apparently on an H-1B visa. So this was kind of shocking when we kind of saw this. So
Yeah.
what happened? What happened here is this person goes into great detail in regards to what they use to control the messaging of the election. Now, I've gone through parts of it, and I've been talking to a few others in regards to what this is, how it is, and what it is, and how it worked. But there's a lot to go in there. But the short of it is they used the AI technologies that they had, both Grok, which is X's own AI system, very powerful, very good to do research and aggregate, as well as another one called Eliza, which is an AI agent that's being developed, and I believe it's an open source one. Using both of those AIs, they were able to use it to control multiple artificial accounts. And so with that, they were able to start controlling what was getting popular messaging. And from there, they were able to start doing, they've already been doing this for quite a while. They were able to sort of boost certain posts while cutting down other posts. They were able to not just also do that, but also start adding engagement to the posts. They can start doing a lot more negative engagement on the posts in regards to Kamala and the Democrats versus positive engagement towards Trump and the entire Republican campaign. And they had no problems doing this. And obviously, this is something that nobody's really watching for because nobody really thinks about this. But we're now capable of doing this. And it's a chilling thing to read as you're going through it because if you could do this for this election, and particularly for something as large as the US election, there's nothing that stops them from doing this to the other elections. Like, get ready. When the
Oh,
writ
yeah.
drops for the federal one, we're probably going to see this machine go against it because he's already said he's already favors Pierre Poilievre, and he's going to change the direction in regards to that particular election. And we're also, and with the sudden sort of change of Zuckerberg in regards to Twitter and its policies, as some people have noted now that search results in Twitter have become a little bit suspicious in regards to you can easily find things in Republican, but you can't necessarily find things for the Democrats. I wouldn't be surprised if they start doing more action there. So it's
One of the things in the article I thought was resonated and I thought was interesting. Like, you would assume that they are boosting right wing content or pro Trump
right.
content. That's obvious. But they also boosted far left content that was
Yep.
critical of Democrats and the NDP. And I can tell you for sure that every time, because I often shit on the NDP, Democrats too, but I feel like that's not my lane most of the time. And those tweets always do so much better in terms of reach than anything else I ever post critically about even the liberals or the conservatives, obviously. So, yeah, but whenever I criticize my own or the left, yeah, it was, I knew I would get a boost by the algorithm. You could feel it. You often think you're paranoid in thinking that you're shadow banned or, there's been a huge exodus from Twitter. And this article, or, is it a Reddit post? No, it's a Substack.
No,
But
it's Substack, yes.
they mention that you'll notice a lot of these accounts are gone, right? So
Mhm.
not only have people left because of Elon's Hitler salute, Nazi salute, but the need for those accounts has gone, at least for a bit. And so yeah, it's you'll notice there's a lot of changes going on that platform again, politically wise. So it's hard not to give credence to what
Well,
these folks wrote.
this is where I'm kind of curious as to where these accounts have gone. So, were the accounts completely removed to try to scrub their existence, or were they just like deactivated? Because I'm curious right now if come the Canadian election, suddenly we see a reactivation and they
Oh
suddenly
yeah,
return.
yeah, yeah. And it's not hard for them to just manufacture reach as well, right? So, but I
Hmm.
thought it was interesting at the very end for any folks who have that skill set. They mentioned leaving breadcrumbs behind in the Eliza uh, program. See, like my terminology is not even there for this shit. So, like, if anybody wants to go find it, find evidence that this was there. Apparently, it's still there to be had. So,
Yeah.
um, nothing surprises me about a white South African mining heir. I think, but he hasn't been shy about admitting to wanting to manipulate elections, right? Like the tweets are there, like he's just chirping at the Labour Party in the UK or whoever. He feels like he can interject in everybody's politics, like we do that all the time. But then when it comes from like the cajillionaires, it's a little bit different. It sounds like orders, and they seem to take it as such. But he spent millions and millions of dollars in the U.S. or promised to buy votes, and yeah, they just don't give a fuck. We have entered a new era, people, of masks way off, way off. As we talk about Trump, one of the things, Bezos, for example, I don't fucking care. Amazon took it off their website that they even believe in LGBT rights or black equality, and it's just like off. Masks are so far off, but that's okay because now we know exactly who to come for, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's, I mean, like a lot of people have been calling Musk like he's our real version of a Bond villain. Everybody thought it was going to be Bill Gates, but surprise, it's not.
He looks like a
Um,
Bond villain too.
he does. Um,
Melania's outfit, though, that was real Bond villain, or rather like
no,
Indiana
Hamburglar. She
Jones
was
villain. I
Hamburglar.
mean, I know, but she looked more like a Nazi, and I'd like to just stick with that.
Okay,
I don't have issues with Hamburglar.
that's true.
He's just
That's
stealing
true.
some food.
He does. He does.
McDonald's, I have a problem with. We'll get to them later. We have that. There's good
Steals the
news there
food from him.
in the updates.
Finest gorgeous.
So I think it was inevitable that we would get to talking about Trump and his executive orders. And,
Yes.
excuse me, one of the things that kind of sets our show apart from a lot is that we don't focus on American politics all that much. But we have strong evidence that the leader of the Conservative Party here in Canada, Pierre Poilievre, is ready to parrot Trump. I don't know how he can sit with that, with where the tariffs are at, but there's not much that we're going to talk about Trump doing in his first week of office or first few days in office that I couldn't see Poilievre doing in some shape or form. We can give specific examples as we go through them, but you'll see. Like you'll see, and then you'll hear Poilievre, especially if he sees how it resonates with Trump and the media. They are paying very close attention, so we should. And I think some of the techniques that people are using and the attitudes that are erupting. I mean, the first comment on the stream here today was about Luigi again. And I'm getting the feels from a lot of people that their militancy level just is notching up with every one of these executive orders. Um, that, like, especially the Americans, they have 4 years where they cannot vote him out of office, and they don't have that time to wait. They have like ICE raids happening in their cities right now, so they are quickly learning more new tools. And yeah, I feel like it's a different field than the last time we had ICE raids and the last time we had Trump, and I think people are a lot more defiant about it. But let's talk about some of the. We'll start with the xenophobic executive orders. He's stopped all international aid, not military aid, just to be clear. Okay, just financial aid, just for like the hungry people out there. That's all just stopped. I think it's a 90-day freeze.
Hmm.
But we don't know what's going to happen in 90 days. Like, that will kill people, Joe. Like, that, there's people that have become dependent on that aid. Whether that is a good structure for your community or not, it's not. But it's all some people have. And he's done
Any aid is
that on
good
top of
aid.
everything else.
Any aid is generally good aid. It's addressing people in need. As you said, in some cases, in some places, this might be their only food they ever get, or only medical, or only anything.
Yeah,
And it's horrible.
it is. And, like, I think the one that hit us the most is his freeze on refugees.
Yep.
He is one of the lines that they've used in the executive order there is just like very open ended. They've stopped all refugee intake until such time as the further entry into the United States of refugees aligns with the interests of the United States, implying that the refugees coming in, or the idea of taking in refugees, do they forget about the Statue of Liberty all the time? It's so very
They do. They
selective what
do.
they think being
Yeah.
American is, or what being Christian is. Like, I don't have religion in my notes. That's not really what I'm here for. But, like, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like, it's just what. Okay, so he's declared refugees against the interests of the United States. What does that mean for people? There are thousands, tens of thousands of people that have been processed uh, almost to the full extent. They have their security checks, which expire at a certain point. They have all these other hoops that they've jumped through that usually produce paperwork that has an expiry period. And they've booked flights to come into the country. Like, they are ready. They are good. They have done everything.
Hmm.
And their flights have been canceled because the intake part of the process has been canceled and stopped. So you have people who have gone to like this third party country to do all of this, so they're neither within their home country nor in a safe place for them or a good place for them, and they're just stuck.
Yep.
Like, that's so fucked up. Can you imagine what that's doing to so many families? And then what about all the Afghan refugees, the Afghani refugees that they had, that they created, when they just
Yeah.
completely, I mean, they shouldn't have been in Afghanistan in the first place, but the pullout was such a mess. We all watched it. People were falling from planes trying to leave.
Yep.
And they promised refugee status to all of these folks. They're all over the place. They're in Pakistan and in other neighboring countries where, because the embassy's closed, so they're like, we'll give you refugee status, but you have to somehow flee Afghanistan, get to another country that has a U.S. embassy so we can process you. And they did that. Like,
Hmm.
15,000 at least that we know of.
They did the
And
process they claim that people are not doing. They did the process.
yes, this is not like the illegals. This is not crossing in. This is people who have done all the paperwork. They've passed
Yep.
security checks. They helped American troops. They were translators. They were, I don't know what roles they filled, but many, and their families. And they're just in limbo. Like, maybe never. Probably not under Trump. What's he going to do? Just like casually reopen this? This is his frame of mind. This is how he's thinking. He's sent troops to the U.S. border. Well, Bakersfield, any chance you could pull up an article on Bakersfield, California? Because the people there, which is a large migrant community, so folks
Hmm.
who don't know, like, most of the food we eat is grown by migrant workers, a lot of them undocumented. The same is in the case in Canada. In Canada, we have the temporary foreign workers program. But anyway, I digress. Either way, the community there, anticipating the mass deportations, which is another xenophobic executive order, uh, policy coming out of the Trump administration, they have stopped working the fields. They have mass protests have erupted there, and they are pushing back. And I think the Americans are seeing this and the impact it's going to have at the grocery stores or whatnot. Then they're also seeing the threats coming from Canada's, withholding energy. I don't know how valid that is. I mean, I'm not sure we're going to benefit from that all that much either. So, but, I think they're getting a little wary of what the implications are going to be globally for these folks, for these policies. And, yeah, so there are ways
This one goes all the way back to January 10th too. So they knew this was coming.
Yeah. Like this particular community, I guess, had some salting. Like, they are militant, they are fed up. I guess whenever you're like on the front line of repression, and it is so clear, we've talked about that on Blueprints of Disruption so many times, it becomes clear who the enemy is, where to fight, and everybody can like push together that way. Quite often it takes being in awful circumstances, and like this isn't the first time. Like, ICE didn't just start existing. They have, for folks who don't know, this is the immigration wing of the U.S. I don't know if they're like federal police. I guess they're federally mandated. They often go in without warrants. They're going into workplaces. They've been cleared to go into schools and hospitals. And what they do is they just basically, I was trying to explain this to my mother, who cannot believe me, but they round up everyone who looks Latino or they think might be undocumented worker. And they don't even check papers at that point. They just round them up. So recently in New Jersey, there was an ICE raid on a workplace. The mayors of these towns are pissed. I'd love to play the clip of that Chicago mayor where he's just like, you've got to be fucking crazy to think that I'm going to start blaming migrants for my problems. And the mayor of New Jersey kind of had a similar answer, going like, they came in and they abducted U.S. citizens. They just, when you're ready, they just rounded people up. Some people had papers, some people didn't. They eventually sorted them out, but intentionally they detained without warrant. The federal government is just coming in and abducting people. And, the Americans, they think they're free. The more and more their government does this, the less and less like they'll believe in the systems. Right. And all of these DEI rollbacks are having impacts on people's jobs. Eventually, people are going to be impacted so much that they just can't swallow that Trump jargon anymore, no matter how much they thought they loved him in the first place. But listen to the Chicago mayor. Are you able to cue that up?
I think so. I got
Let's try
this
it.
one here. I just need to restart my connection here.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's just because I didn't have the audio there.
It's okay. So one of the things that folks are doing to mobilize against this, because again, like that's the focus, right, is what do we do about it? So there's red cards. Red cards are notoriously like know your rights cards. And a lot of folks are just printing those out en masse, cutting them up and handing them out. Teachers are having to do this for their students because specifically Trump has cleared them to enter schools and hospitals to do this. And so teachers have finding ways to protect their students. I've even seen teachers post about creating blockades, treating an ICE incursion into their school the same they would an active shooter drill to blockade the doors. They're like, I will not hand over my students. Like, are you kidding me? You ask me to come into school every day ready to take a bullet for these kids, and you think I'm just going to hand them over to someone to just send them back to wherever they came from. And thankfully, a judge has blocked one of his attempted executive orders of the birthright citizenship.
Yeah.
He wanted to repeal that, and the judge was like, no, you can't. So get ready for a new set of judges. But here's the Chicago mayor. You want to try to play that?
Yep.
Johnson sitting down for a one-on-one interview today talking about what the city is doing. And he made it clear that Chicago will not be intimidated by any threats of action from the Trump administration, even ones that could land him or the city in court. Mayor Brandon Johnson ready for wherever the battle may go over the rights of undocumented immigrants who are just minding their own business and going about their lives. What do you make of the fact that there have been no raids so far?
Well, first of all, let me just reaffirm our position as clearly as I possibly can, that we will always remain a welcoming and sanctuary space.
The mayor said he has no intelligence on when any raids by ICE agents could happen or how many people might be targeted, although sources have told ABC7 Homeland Security is going after dozens of people here in Chicago. The Trump DOJ seems to now have taken off the gloves by saying that they will pursue deportation targets in schools and churches. What is your response?
And I find that to be quite frank with you, I find that to be unconscionable and reprehensible.
A Department of Justice memo this week said those who impede immigration enforcement could be subject to prosecution. Do you believe that you could be targeted because of Chicago's welcoming city ordinance?
Well, look, my main focus is protecting the residents and the people of the city of Chicago. You know, the threats that are coming from this current administration are
Here,
are
Joe,
threats that
play
we're not
this for
intimidated
me, will
by.
you?
U.S. attorneys' offices
call it.
across
Do
the
that?
country have also
Yeah,
been
yeah.
directed to review sanctuary laws and be prepared to challenge them in court.
So yeah, like the amount of people that are pushing up against this is not just limited to grassroots, but the grassroots are also, organizing this. And it's heartbreaking to hear some of the tactics that they're having to employ. Like mutual aid is always useful, right? We have to learn we're not going to be able to fight this together. And people already know that, especially migrant communities. So, but they're having to organize like long-term babysitters. Will you watch going to their comrades? Like, who can watch our children? Should we be deported? Where can they go? Just the amount of things you would have to line up and then sit around and anticipating being deported. Even folks that are documented that just look Latino, like what do they have to carry their papers on them? Does this not sound familiar? Right? Having to be checked for papers based on how you look. And if you don't pass the paper test, you're on a plane or a bus out of here. Here's a little fiery version, more of like our version of Chicago Mayor.
There we go.
What I do find interesting is that when 30,000 Ukrainians sought asylum here in the city of Chicago, nobody said a mumbling word. But all of a sudden, indigenous people who are trying to get to a land that was robbed from them through colonization, they want me as a black man to be mad at them? You got to be out of your freaking mind.
I walk through the valley of the shadow of death.
All right. See that?
Well said.
Much better clip. That's what the media lights aren't on you, like a less refined version, but like that's what we're all feeling, right? So, and he's not the only mayor feeling that way. So this isn't going to be a cakewalk for Trump. I don't know if any Americans are watching, but I'm going to pass on all these techniques because that's what we do as parts of Blueprints of Disruption. If you ever see immigration officials entering a building or your neighborhood, you are to yell "La migra" as loud as possible. If you have documentation, you can distract them. Many people are advising that they do need warrants. You can refuse them entry into certain areas. If they don't have a warrant, you don't have to comply with handing people over because they don't have a warrant. They can get one, but they often don't. So it's just, we already are having a form of mass deportation here. It's not as ugly as what you're seeing in the United States, perhaps, but this came under our liberals. Okay, our liberals enacted all kinds of visa changes, knowing that almost 1 million people are going to end up undocumented. So they have to leave. And the Canadian version of mass deportations is, okay, well, we'll find you, we'll make you leave, and then we're going to make you pay for that. So it's like up to like almost $13,000 that someone would have to pay if they had to be escorted out of the country because their visa expired and they outstayed their welcome. So, and that's under the liberals.
And it's even more messed up because a lot of it has to do right now with the temporary foreign workers, which is...
And international students.
International students. I mean, the temporary foreign workers, I'm like, that was just exploitation of foreigners. That's the only way I ever viewed that one. I'm like, you just bring in other foreign workers because they're cheaper, and you're going to use that to, as another way of union busting, or just, devaluing work in general so that you can get as cheap as possible. And the students, I'm like, I still don't understand the students one, just as to why we suddenly decide to set war against students. They're students. It's
Well, scapegoating's a necessity, right? Especially when the
yeah,
economy starts to go to shit. You can't blame the politicians or capital. We need somebody to punch down to, and that it's so fucking effective, especially with
yeah.
the xenophobia that's drifting. And the one of the tough spots of the US doing what they're doing and closing their borders essentially is there are fewer and fewer third party countries that are hospitable as well. Like I feel like we've already become inhospitable under our liberals, and I can only imagine what's going to happen with the conservatives. But Europe has
Don't need to
enacted
imagine.
really xenophobic policies in Europe in terms of taking in migrants and their attitudes there. And so there's like fewer and fewer places taking refugees, even though we know pending climate disaster is going to create even more. Like on top of the economic refugees have war and all of the other reasons people migrate, simply the changes in of climate are going to create even more, and we are just shutting them down all across. And anything that Trump does, even you hear Polyev speak, he's okay. It's like he's okay with Trump just greenlighting everything for him. Like Trump's walking so he can run, but I like other things obviously preceded this. Like the failure of the Democrats to do anything for working class people has given us Trump. So we can't just blame Trump, but what he's doing, I am even awed in the most horrible way possible at what he's been able to accomplish in the first few days. Like I knew it would be bad, but I didn't think he would just roll in so hard and fast. What do you got?
That's
for us?
Canada. That's Canada. That's Hamilton, Canada. So this is one of the other reasons why, and Jess and I were discussing this a bit behind the scenes, which was to also include the U.S. in regards to messaging, because everybody should be aware, if not already, when it comes to things happening in the States, it's always going to affect Canada strongly. And I say strongly first because of just our cultural similarities and parallels. We've had this messaging, and I've been observing it for at least since last summer. This is from a extremist Nazi group down in Hamilton area. I've also got some videos, if you guys had followed me, in regards to people doing around some protests in Toronto saying Canada first, which is doing the same kind of stuff, which is shutting down the immigration. These ones are asking for deportations. The other one's just saying shutting down. It's here. This rhetoric is here, and it is very, very strong. I've been in a fair amount of lives, as well as a fair amount of other places. The conservative right wing that goes from a far right to just the conservatives are all starting to parrot the, well, we've got too many immigrants. This is causing the housing crisis. This is, which is a distraction, because we all know that's not what's causing the housing crisis. They're taking over the schools, student one, and they're just peppering because they've been told from their outlets that this is what it is.
Yeah.
And they're happy to go with it. And this is also making the ones that are racist quite content, because suddenly they're looking like not the bad guy, or at least in their heads they're thinking they're not the bad guy because look, they're saying the same stuff as us. Hey.
Oh yeah, and there's an appetite for it, right? Especially when you've laid that groundwork and you have even we all hold racist sentiments, all us settlers. Like there's so much stuff we hold on to that we can't unpack. We can't sit there and say we don't hold biases. So even your average voter out there who doesn't consider themselves racist, can we call that, have had all of these seeds planted on housing, education, like, and honestly, they feel so helpless against saying it's government, because they've probably tried to vote every fucking which way and nothing has changed for them. And so it's so much easier to be like, well, what if we just take out all these people? And if we're going to take out anybody, it might as well be the people who came most recently, who don't look like me, maybe who don't speak like me. And so it's such an easy thing to have take hold, and they know that, right? That's why they pick some of these talking points, because we inherently believe a lot of these things already, unfortunately. So
Mhm.
it's it's Pierre Poilievre won't have a hard time, especially like we're gonna go to the before we move on to what his attack on trans people and LGBTQ. One of the other deportation kind of orders that he has put through is to remove anybody without citizenship who has vocally supported Hamas or Hezbollah. I don't know. That one I read that really late last night and I haven't seen any responses to it, but that is tough. That is another area of criminalization that is surely to come. You know, it's not a short step. They've already put folks on the terror list who do groundwork here in Canada.
Yeah, I
The
mean,
Simi Doing Network.
this one is very much like this is a direct challenge, I say, to the very nature of them in regards to you guys believe free speech in regards to expressing like your discontent to your government for policies or anything else. This here is clearly that's not the right one though. This is clearly against this is clearly something that's just like against your freedom of speech. Like
Yeah.
your government's taking action on you for speaking out against something. This would be like deporting anybody who spoke out against the Vietnam War during Vietnam.
I'm sure they would have
or
loved to do
any.
that though. I'm
That's
sure
true.
you know, yeah, like, and then Canadians be like, "Oh, I'm safe. I've got citizenship." But no, we know a lot of people have been put in jail now for Palestinian solidarity work, and we know people who are, it's being framed as hateful for speaking against Zionism and the redefinition of anti-Semitism. And so this is not a stretch to think that something like that would come to Canada, maybe not focused around deportation, but about criminalizing support of armed resistance.
Yep.
When we've talked so long about on the show why Canadians support something like that, right? Because we are a settler state, and Indigenous uprisings and resistance is really not anything we want to promote. So, not we as in me. What am I throwing up? Yeah. So we've heard definitely this. Like, if you've been on Twitter, for sure, you have had people tell you to go to Gaza or say we should be able to deport you. Like, they're talking about like old stock Canadians. They don't give a shit. They want you out of the country. These even liberals have lost their minds in terms of like what they think freedom is all of a sudden, because these policies they would wholeheartedly support. But let's move on to another one of his executive orders, because there's a lot, and this is another one that Pierre has openly pretty much said he's going to do. Whether he's going to prioritize it in the same way Trump did, it was like the first thing he did, like day one, was to say the federal government in the United States now only recognizes two genders, that is male and female. And you think that that's really silly, that's really petty, but it has a million implications. One of them being especially when we're talking in terms of movements and organizing, is federal grants, federal funding would be denied to organizations who didn't adopt the same framework. If they were operating under, the knowing fact that there are more than two genders, and that's part of their policy and how they operate, then they can be denied or will be denied federal funding. It also erases trans people. Right, part of what he is insisting is that people be referred to their gender at birth or at conception.
Yeah, not birth, conception. This is very important distinction.
Tell them why. I need a sip of my iced coffee.
Yeah. So as I'm sure everybody's aware, they stated that you're gonna be identified as what your gender is at conception. And for those who are aware of biology, at conception you don't have a gender yet.
So do you have female chromosomes?
you have female chromosomes. Well, no, you still have male chromosomes because that's in your genetics. But you're not identified as a male or female yet because you haven't developed. And so there's a bit of sort of debate in regards to, well, so you'd be either female or non-binary depending which one your interpretation is. But either way, definitely you're not going to be male. Like everybody right now in Congress, all the white old Republicans are either all female now or all non-binary. Take your pick. Either
No,
case,
there is no
you're
non-binary, right? Like according
Yeah.
to Trump, right? So,
Mhm.
I shouldn't even smile, like, because this is heartbreaking for trans people who have already been organizing here against this very same shit, right? We've had in the schools where folks have said they need parental permission in order to have a name change in their school, and provinces that are ending gender affirmation healthcare,
Alberta,
and
for example.
yeah, like there's people already here in Canada that
Saskatchewan.
fear for their children, rightfully so. And I think on Blueprints of Disruption, it was like almost 2 years ago, we interviewed two comrades out in Alberta that were running community defense for, drag story time and the things like that. Like, this has been ongoing for quite some time. And Joe, my technical wizard here, has pulled up a clip where, we're like, Pierre, are you going to follow suit? Like, this is horrific. And
This is the CBC interview.
I won't
that
spoil
he
it for
did.
you people, but I think you know where this is going.
First day on the job, President Trump signed an executive order. The U.S. government only recognizing two genders, male, female. They're unchangeable. If elected as prime minister, is that something that you're going to kind of walk in line with, or what are your feelings on that executive order?
Well, I don't know. Do you have any other genders that you'd like to name?
Me personally,
Yes.
I'm just asking more so if you're in line with what he is saying. Do you agree with what he's saying? Is that something that you would be lockstep with if elected as prime minister?
Well, I'm not aware of any other genders than men and women. I mean, if you have any other that you want me to consider, you're welcome to tell me right now.
Well, there's personally, I am a man.
Okay.
People say cis man.
That's good.
There
That's
are
good.
people there who they say they're
Me too. I'm
gender
a man as
neutral.
well.
You are a man.
So
Yes. There are people there who say they're
something in
gender
common.
neutral. Yeah, they say they're gender neutral. They're a trans person. Is that something that you would recognize here, whereas in the States, at least with their U.S. government, the way they're seeing it, there's only two?
I'm only aware of two, but I mean, if you come up with another list, then you're welcome to do that. But I'm aware of two. And as far as I'm concerned, we should have a government that just minds its own damn business and leaves people alone to make their own personal decisions. That's the kind of government I'm going to run.
Oops. I think Jess is having a bit of an issue here. She'll be back right in the moment. Speaking of the moment, there she is.
It's so fresh to hear him say about, like, oh, we should mind our own business. And second, he knows non-binary people or intersex people exist. Thank you for the correction, Fusdorf and 9. They wanted to make sure that we differentiate between sex and gender when we're talking about Trump's gender policy, and that we've been using the word non-binary and it should be intersex. So my apologies, and I much appreciate the education. I hate talking about Trump. I want to ignore him, but we cannot, right? So the pushback has to happen now, right? People should be all over Polyev for kind of reaffirming this shit.
He's and they are. So it's first of all, his entire I only know two genders. Like the entire playing the idiot game is just
Lies.
It's insulting. Like this, and why are you talking like everybody knows exactly what the entire gender issues. You've been made aware of this. You've had discussions. You have people in your cabinet part of the 2S LGBTQ plus community. Melissa Landsman as a prime example.
Ugh.
It's It is, Alyssa Lansman. I mean, we could probably have a whole side tangent in regards to, as she was a very strong supporter of trans rights, and you watched her soul kind of leave her body as she kind of softened that messaging to toe the party line.
How do people do that?
I'm like, I didn't agree with you, but I felt you had principles. Not anymore. Like, no. Like, those are hard lines that I
Lanceman, I
completely
wear
understood.
IDF dog tags in the house. That one.
Sorry?
Melissa Lanceman, the one who wears IDF
Yes,
dog
yes,
tags in the
yes.
house. Okay.
Yeah,
Just making
yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
It's just, but yeah, no, I would have loved an anchor. Like the anchor did, I think he was a bit shocked. Maybe he shouldn't have been, but I would have loved someone to give him pushback, to list,
Yeah.
and to challenge him, to be like, surely you have sat in the house while people attested to the various genders and possibilities and the advocacy that's already gone on in Canada, just like erased all that work. Like he's just been immune to it. He hasn't heard or seen it. And that's hurtful. That's just fucking hurtful. The way he framed that, like they just don't exist, like erasing comrades.
Oh, absolutely. Fused Orphan 9's last comment there, I want to respond because I think it's an excellent comment. But the reality is, so Fused Orphan 9 saying, we need someone to ask him those same questions and call him out on his bullshit. I completely agree. The problem is, Pierre is a bit of a runaway when it comes to reporters. He will do his little speeches in front of the reporters. Usually it's a whole, I'm not so much rehearsed, but it's just him just parroting rhetoric that he constantly repeats. And then he'll do his 3-word slogans and just list them all off, and that's it. And if it's a question that's either prepped for him or he's already aligned with, he will absolutely do it. And like he'll respond to it. But if it's anybody challenging him on any position, whether trying to like, hey, you said you have policies, we haven't seen what you're going to be doing. All you say is, you're going to axe the tax, right, or you're build the homes. What's it going to look like if you try to build homes? Are you going to throw money at this? Are we going to do this? Are we going to do that? And immediately he's just like, oh, look, this is the woke liberal media trying to get the, and some of these guys are like, no, I'm at the Globe and Mail. I'm at I'm conservative media. I want to know what the plan is, not just 3-word buzzwords, because that doesn't build homes. 3 words don't build a home.
No, even come election time, we quite often don't even get platforms anymore. Like that's become perfectly normal. Olivia Chow hardly had any platform at all, even with all of the people under her asking very specific questions and needs, and it's released really, really late, or it's like bullet points. There's no meat to it, and then you have politicians saying they're acting on some mandate that nobody voted on. But
we're getting so close to idiocracy now.
It's Biden give us this warning about oligarchy, as though, I mean, now it's just a very apparent oligarchy. We didn't talk about his appointments because that's not something we really would have to deal with. Yes, we have to deal with their idiocy, but here our cabinets don't operate like that to allow people to just start appointing, although they do get a say in who gets to be candidate and who gets to run in the really juicy ridings and then who gets to sit in the cabinet, but it's not quite at the level of appointing Vince McMahon's wife to education and all of the other Elon, and the list is long, but I'm wondering,
it's the entire list of the appointments is just disturbing. It's again, when we were first like we were watching a couple of months ago, as we're seeing like Elon Musk and Vivek being assigned to a new department called DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency. We're like, that's what? Like
ask the staff at Twitter if he was efficient when he came in.
Oh yeah. And
they were like locked out of all of their servers and nonsense because he was letting IT go. But it's one interesting thing is like people when they talk about portfolios that people get, I don't like
Mhm.
when the narrative shifts to, well, they don't know anything about it. They don't have
Yeah.
experience in it. And I get that that seems valid, but when democracy was, which it wasn't perfect then,
Yeah.
but when it was conceived as an idea, lot was used quite often to put folks in charge of portfolios like that, like decision making for an industry or, a section of the community. And it wasn't like, well, who knows the most about farming? It was literally drawn out of a pot, a lot, and you were going to deal with the farming issues for a year. And the point was that you then learned from the people who did know. You took it from them, and then you applied logic and your understanding of what the needs of your community were, and you made decisions based on that. So we don't always appoint a minister. That's why you can get cabinet shuffles, because they don't actually have to know how schools run. Obviously, like Ontario has education ministers, never went to, well, maybe the new one is, but like for the longest time it was Lecce. He'd never been to a public school. And Oostenhoff was and it was the same thing. He was the associate or the deputy. And, like, you don't need it. You might think it helps, but we don't actually elect experts in those fields ever, right? It's not like we play a balanced card. We're like, okay, make sure we got a candidate that'd be good in education. It's like, that's not, we're just supposed to they're just supposed to be representative of us. They're not expected to be experts in everything. They're just supposed to be working class people who just like know what the community needs. That's it. That's what bureaucrats are for. Like, can this work? How will this work? Right? Oh, we need everybody fed. How can we feed everybody? Like, you don't actually have to figure it all out. You're just like the driver of needs. So yeah, like you can shit on Trump for his appointments, but not because they're not experts in their field, but because they're fascists and Nazis and overall really bad people doing really bad policies. Like, get to the meat, right? Don't find ways to discredit like other people, like the security check kind of narrative for Polyev. I don't give a fuck if he can pass a security check. I don't think I'd pass a security check. Joe probably wouldn't pass a security check. Does that mean I can't be in politics? Or I just can't be high up in politics? Like, what is it? Why do we care what the police state has to say about our politicians? Like, Pierre's, he's a piece of shit because of X, Y, and Z. Like, just rewind the episode. We've given you some examples, but it's like...
Yeah. Well, the police check, though, I think is one of those things it's a bit of an interesting question, because for him in particular, you're right. There's a certain amount that we need to sort of back off in regards to focusing too much on it, because you're right. It is a distracting point. There are some questions that do need to be answered as to why he did have a security check before. Why did he not get it now? And is this his attempt? Is it just purely because he wants to be able to speak about anything, or is there something in there? Obviously, we got the report coming out in 4 days.
Interference? Is that the
Foreign interference is in
one?
4 days.
Oh, the shitstorm. So next Friday we'll have lots to talk about in terms of that. But again, like, this foreign interference claim is a lot of distraction too. Often it's red baiting. Like, you don't think every one of our politicians is... We're just talking about how they're taking the lead from the United States, like the biggest war criminals, the biggest shit disturbers, imperialists out there. And we're definitely okay with them taking lead and influence from U.S. politicians. But the idea that they would meet with foreign governments is like... It feeds into the xenophobia, right? Because it's always like China, right? Like, oh, did they deal with China or Russia? That's what you want to know, right? Not if they've been dealing with Israel, not if they've been dealing with Germany or France or England. That's okay. That's okay. Our needs are all the same, but they're not, right? It's just like you are trying to find out if any of the demon states have been dealing with them. And
the foreign interference, they do want to find out if because right now the latest sort of the hubbub is that it's going to have been the Indian government that affected election outcomes in Canada, and that's a problem. If a foreign adversary is controlling our or affecting our, and right now more than ever, we're going to be watching out for this. Outside hands being involved in our elections, although we know to a certain extent there always is, and you're right. But if there's ways we can kind of start removing it, like, if India is causing interference by who knows what methods they were using, that's what this report's going to be coming out. We know, as we were just discussing about an hour ago, but a little while ago, about Elon and his new system that's interfering with elections by controlling the messaging on Twitter. And if that starts to grow further out, then we're going to have a new problem.
I think I'm just so disillusioned with elections altogether that I can't care too much. I care. I get why I'm not mocking the fact that you care, but I'm just like, you know what? I don't know. Is India better or developers? Because I've seen what developers in oil and gas do when they influence our elections, or when the fucking mass media or mainstream media influence our elections. I've seen what happens. Like, could it be worse? Like, I'm sorry. Is there a worse outcome than Polyev that they could fashion, or Justin Trudeau, what we've had? Like, I don't know. What could be worse? Maybe the Indian government wants Jagmeet to win. Maybe they want the Greens to win. I'm willing to shake it up a little bit, because anything, like,
India wants the Conservatives to win. India is very, very conservative.
Well, it looks like Canadians want the Conservatives to win right now. So,
but is it Canadians, or is this what's going on? This is where the question comes.
Have you talked to your neighbors, Joe? It's fucking scary out there, right? There's people who know, but there's still so many people like that, you know, aren't really paying attention. And like Ford wouldn't be pulling the shots, calling for an election. Polyev wouldn't be, you know, they might be, if in this scenario, they might be relying on interference or whatnot, but they are pretty confident that the people like them right now.
They are. Yeah. Although, as Maple Mines just pointed out, the polls are starting to shift a little bit, and that's because of the Carney sort of hiccup. There's estimation, so it's going to be interesting to watch in regards to this particular election, everything else. I know about Carney.
Yeah, because
I was there.
I don't want Polyev, right? But we have a real axe to grind with the Liberals, right? And they're going to get a total rebranding under Carney. And folks don't know how bad Carney is. Go back and watch last week's rant with Ashley. She had all kinds of reasons. Like, this is a man whose best friend is Bloomberg, the most richest man. He has run banks. He has been responsible for so many really bad decisions. I mean, like, bad in terms of like the working class and the economy. And it's not like I want Freeland either. This is why, Joe, it's really hard for me to hear, because it's like, okay, we could talk about the Liberal leadership, but like it's all bad, and worse.
Yep.
And then the Conservatives or Liberals, I can't say that anymore, because, you know, if Polyev would do the Liberals wouldn't do the stuff that Trump is doing. A lot of it.
No.
I mean, if it went on long enough and nobody pushed back, they might be like, "Ooh, we can be a little more fash than we used to be," right? Like they'll creep that way. But the Cons would do it right away.
Window has shifted with them a little bit. Like the Liberals have gotten a little more comfortable with a couple more right wing things. I mean, aside from bringing people
Nazi
back
running
to work.
For leader now.
There's that. But you know, it's they've got they've got the whatchamacallit, the entire immigration thing. There's still somewhat left on social policies because it still doesn't affect the capital. So they'll be left on social because, you know, being left on social seems to be good for capital. And so, because again, it's a positive message and it'll get them more employees, and more employees means cheaper resources.
Yeah.
So
sorry, I'm just gonna show this comment here for folks. Is it not showing? No.
There it is.
This one.
Yeah.
I'm assuming already is being facetious, that they want neither, or they're acknowledging it's just going to be one of the other. I
know who's posting it. Absolutely, they're being facetious.
Yeah. But to answer their first question, which again I know is tongue-in-cheek, we are, like, collectively, us. Yeah. One of the writings I read this morning, it was in the Times, so I had to like sign up for I didn't pay for a subscription, and it was just talking about the need to recognize, because a lot of us take a lot on our shoulders, right? It feels really hard right now. You're like, what do I do first? I can't do nothing. And it's just that acknowledging that it is just about making more and more connections with people, because it will take a lot of us working together to push back against this, and we will win. But yeah, it's hard to kind of not feel like it's on you or you and your few comrades, whatever you're doing in your area. But the answer is us. So I get really disheartened when people put a lot of hope into the NDP. I see another comment there, like, folks don't know who to vote for. That is really resonates with a lot of people. A lot of people are feeling abandoned, like they have no political home in Canada right now. And I can feel for that. 2 weeks ago on Blueprints of Disruption, we interviewed a group of communists from out east in the Halifax area, but they're called the Atlantic Regional Communists. And trust me, they're not your average Marxist group. You know what I mean? You have to listen to the episode to give it full justice, because I won't do it. But they are like the antithesis of probably any Marxist group that you've talked to. I mean, they're very focused on Indigenous sovereignty and decolonizing, and they're structured a little differently than what you'd expect, but they were driven from various parties, either disillusioned like a lot of us, or, you know, it just, they couldn't stomach it anymore, whatnot. And they wanted to create something like completely opposite of the political parties out there. And I feel like that kind of organizing, the stuff that we focus on Blueprints, is what will save us. Like, we can talk about politicians because we have to know what's coming, but not because like changing who's at the top is the be all end all of how we get out of this shit show.
There is a large education that we need to work on, particularly for, and this is the big one, and there is still the mindset amongst the majority of Canadians of, well, we're a two-party system. No, we never haven't. It's like, well, we only see the two parties.
Like
it absolutely does. No, don't get me wrong. It absolutely does. And you always see, you know, the Liberals and Conservatives bouncing back and forth federally. Eventually, you'll see a little bit more mix-up. But we haven't seen any mix-up at the top yet. And it almost feels like, well, they don't change, so well, I have to vote for Liberal or Conservative. Well, no. Well, if you're not going to be part of that change, then you're never going to see the change you want. You need to go outside the comfort zone. You know, if you're, you know, you need to make sure you take a look at the list of what is a priority for you, as well as your family, your friends, neighborhoods, and everything else, and which party is going to actually aid in regards to this, and also get them to listen to the different things. Now, ABC is absolutely correct in regards to anything but conservative. This is a big one, particularly in regards to Polyev and the rhetoric he's doing. But we should be able to strive for more. And as it stands right now, we're going to deal with the same problem the Democrats dealt with, which is they gave an unexciting platform. Although there's also other questions going on, it still came down to, you were in the middle trying to appease everybody on, you know, and jumping towards the right. This is what they're doing with Carney. Somehow it's eating a little bit, because the rhetoric was just so strong in regards to Trudeau bad, Trudeau bad, Trudeau bad. Again, many things about Trudeau he did that I do not agree with. Absolutely. I don't believe some of the rhetoric that they are putting out in regards to he controls banks, he controls the gas prices, he controls everything, and a lot of things that Trudeau did wrong. You don't need to. But again, they hammered this thing constantly.
Yeah.
So at some point, when you hammer it constantly long enough, you'll start to believe it. I've talked to people who identify as the center and middle, and they're like, oh, they're all terrible. And this is what they want. They want people, particularly in the swinging votes type, who look at the whole thing going, it's all terrible. Because then they'll be disingenuous, not be interested in getting involved in politics. And as we all know, conservatives always go out to the ballot. And if you've got that entire group just overwhelmed, because everybody's feeling overwhelmed a lot, then they're not going to show up, and they're going to come in with this. Yep. That's
it. And that was that rant.
That was my rant there, and sorry it sounds depressing.
No, okay, that's why we always save the disruptive updates for the latter part of the episode, and that's where we're at now. So
yes, make us happy. Make us happy again. Yes. Fix me. Fix
this
the
is where
messaging I did.
We hear about all the people on the ground, shit disturbing, doing the work that we need them to do, and usually I have victories. Sometimes they're not great updates because we are facing a police state. And then I'll follow that up with a new segment this week. Like, I'm just like throwing stuff at Joey. He's like, what? It's our activist tip of the week, because when I'm looking at what Trump's doing and I'm seeing the response and I'm talking to comrades about electoral politics and the fruitlessness of it all, I become more and more determined to provide people, again, not through my own knowledge. I have some. I keep thinking, like, I'm not just a parrot, but I do lean a lot on the teachings of other activists and anarchists and whatnot. And I think Blueprints of Disruption will be more committed to providing, like, the tools that folks are going to need to go up against the police state, and, you know, how to deal with the criminalization of what we do. Right, because we advocate for people to disrupt, and so let's make sure they're prepared and can do it as safely as possible, or at least as prepared as possible. So let's get the updates, though. People who don't need any of our advice, because they are doing it perfectly. Indigo is constantly being haunted. For those who don't know why we haunt Indigo, look up Indigo Kills Kids. They've got a few social media feeds with different names, but that'll get you where you need to go. Joe looks like maybe he's trying to pull something up. Maybe not. Anyway, no. So recently that campaign, which is trying to just be, you know, they've been outside Indigo stores, especially during the Christmas shopping season. And, you know, they are claiming to be responsible for shutting down a couple Indigo locations. Of course, Indigo is also union busting, so you never really know why they're doing it, but it's always for bad reasons. And anyway, their CEO, Heather Reisman, who, you know, is a real top Zionist here in Canada. I mean, she heads a charity that basically solicits orphans from around the world, people with no families, to come have a family in the IDF, among other things. So, like, actively supports genocide. Okay, so we'll just have that there. And yeah, we will add that to the screen for sure. And so she was going to be speaking. Part of her shtick is like to go and talk with authors as they release their books. And so the activists are focusing in on the authors. They know they can't reach Reisman and her good conscience. And so they're going after the authors that she's interviewing, and they are bombarding them with emails and pleas to cancel the event. And they were successful. So there was a book launch for Lisa Genova, and there's no confirmation on what tactic worked, but the event was canceled. And I'm going to give credit to the people doing the work. That, you know, it's the activists, it's the Palestinian solidarity activists that did that, and are continuing to be a thorn in Indigo's side. So boycott Indigo if you aren't already. But, you know, yeah, educate yourself. So when people are like, oh, it's a Jewish-owned business, you can't just boycott it because it's Jewish-owned. That's not why. There's a lot of reasons why, and you'll have the retorts just, like, ready to go if you visit that website there. So kudos to them. But I'm going to go to my favorite one next. And this will also tease next week's episode, although I can't confirm if either of them are there, but we do talk about the disruption of Freeland's launch.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, I'm still drawing joy. Can you see me? Like, I don't often get to show my face. It's Blueprints of Disruption is just an audio podcast, but, like, so happy because, like, I have a personal beef with Freeland. When I ran as a candidate, I don't talk about that often, but it keeps coming up in this episode. I tweeted about Venezuela because, you know, she was at her coup business again, and she got up in the House and said that I should apologize. Like, she didn't know who I am. I'm nobody. It was like York Simcoe by-election. Like, nobody cared what happened up here. I had no chance of winning at all, but she drew attention to me in my tweet in the fucking House of Commons. And I was like, ever since then, I've just, like, hated that woman immensely. I already had reasons, but then it became a personal beef. So to watch her career pretty much tank, because I'm thinking that's what happened that day, when she went to this community center to launch her bid for the Liberal leadership, the federal Liberals. This is the deputy prime minister. She has been at Justin's side through this entire genocide, through their entire weak-ass response to a pandemic that we're in, a million reasons to be upset with Freeland, but she thinks she's going to be the one to give them a facelift. The fuck she is. So for folks who missed it, I don't know, did I link anything for us to...
Yeah,
the post report.
Yeah, I'm trying to find a good shot of the launch there, because there was somebody got a really good photo of it. It's gonna take me a bit to see if I can find it. But
So
yeah,
I'm just going to talk about the tactic that they use because I've seen it deployed a few times and it's effective. So they got people obviously into the event that, you're definitely not wearing a watermelon pin or, some people were even masked. I'm surprised like that's not a red flag for people that anybody masked might be progressive. But anyway, they get into the event and they don't make themselves obvious. And then when Freeland starts to speak, they disrupt. Those disruptors are removed. They allow the event to start again. And within seconds, minutes, another person will disrupt. And this continues for as long as you have people left in that haven't been removed. And my favorite part was at one point, it's the typical talking, because she's trying to broadcast this. This isn't for the people in the room. She's hoping it's just the tight frame of her and, the wall of people, the wall of faces that they compile behind them. It's like people standing on risers and you're looking at their face and their reaction through all of this. None of them seem to give a shit. None of them look embarrassed for her. But then all of a sudden, one of the infiltrators starts shouting from behind her. She can't hide that from the Zoom feed or whatever she's at. Like, it's just so embarrassing for her. That banner shot, so almost all the photos of her at her launch have, what a grave digger PM is what the language was on the banner behind her. So, her photo ops were ruined. She had to pretty much try to relaunch the next week. Liberal MPs are just lining up behind Carney anyway. A few have pledged for Freeland. House Father's obviously he was standing there behind her. For folks who don't know who that is, Anthony Housefather has got to be the biggest advocate for the IDF in our government. And so, obviously he supports her, and there's a few others, but yeah, I think the writing's on the wall for Freeland, and I couldn't be happier. And again, that was thanks to grassroots advocates, willing to take trespass notice or willing to get hauled out of there. A lot of them were, manhandled, and I wouldn't have liked that. I don't think I would have dealt with that, but they dealt with it. They weren't criticized in the media for being, aggressive. Some people thought they didn't have a right to disrupt her. They do. I think everyone watching believes that they do. But yeah, it didn't go well for her. She wasn't able to flip that in the way. I mean, the National Post, I think, was the only one that was somewhat kind to her in their assessment of how they did. But yeah, we talk about that on the episode that's going to drop on Tuesday with Anna Littman and Fatima from Edmonton, and Anna Littman's from Toronto. She's part of Independent Jewish Voices, and we've had her on the show quite a few times. They're going to talk about, what's happening in the West Bank, but also reflect back on all of the activism and shifts that have occurred in the past 460 plus days. I want to say year, but it's well over a year now. So it's an interesting conversation, but to sum up what they think we should do now that there's been a ceasefire is foot is still on the pedal. Yeah. Especially for allies. There was a consensus that Palestinians, it's complicated, can draw some joy from this moment. The carpet bombing has stopped for the most part in Gaza, but it is a time where they should be able to have some relief, some breath. But at the same time, there's just so much evidence out there that the work just can't stop. And clearly it hasn't, because folks went hard last week. And there's a lot of actions planned for this weekend, specifically to draw attention to the West Bank. The refugee camp Jenin is described as being like Gaza at the moment. Hundreds have had to flee their homes. Settler violence is commonplace in the West Bank, but it's ratcheted up continuously since the genocide started in Gaza, and it's now escalated immensely since the ceasefire. So it seems to be just a shifting, not necessarily troops, but settlers are backed by troops, and it's Israeli settlers, civilians, that are doing the violence there. So just to keep that in mind when we start framing Israeli civilians and settlers as being completely innocent in the occupation, which is kind of a hard argument to make. But yeah, in the UK, now, what I originally typed this in as Palestinian solidarity activists, including Corbyn, break through a police line in the UK, in London. I believe they were in London. They were trying to, in and around the BBC office, which has become essentially a place you cannot protest, according to police. I saw a video this week of activists they were wearing a keffiyeh but holding a blank placard, and they were arrested for just being in the proximity of the BBC offices, 2 of them. And so either way, police tried to determine where this protest could go, where it couldn't go. There's conflicting reports. Always police reports will conflict with the people on the ground. But, you know, when you watch the footage, some of it, you clearly see a march go through a police line, but not violently. Like they're kind of like you would in a club with people in line for beer and you all have to get past them, like to go to the washroom. So you kind of like go between some and then you're on the other side and you can walk freely. So like it was like that awkward, but it looks like it was a bit of entrapment. Corbyn's saying, like, we talked to police. They said we could go on the other side, lay flowers for the dead children of Gaza, and we would disperse. We would be done. That's the agreement. We came after all of their fucking around and moving our roots and all of this. They said we could. So we didn't break through the line, which sounded a lot better. But it's significant, too, because there are arrests now. So they have arrested people for breaking through the police line that they orchestrated. I've seen this tactic, too, in Toronto with the G20. I mean, it's happened all the time, but it's an entrapment of sorts. The G20 example that I give sometimes is, I think it was on Spadina, or at least at the corner of Spadina, because I've got photographs and video. Cops came and just like left a cruiser. They just like parked a cruiser in the middle of the G20 protest, which was madness. Okay. And I don't know. I don't have time to explain all that. You're going to have to look it up. And then they just literally walked backwards as a line. They walked back, march, march, march. They broke in half and then went down side streets. So they came, made space for the cruiser, and then left. And for the longest time, people just sat around the cruiser. But eventually, you know, folks came and did what you will do to an abandoned police cruiser in the middle of a march like that. And it got smashed. I don't remember if it got torched or not. It might have got torched. I left by that point. We'd moved on. But they left it there, right? So that the photos, there could be photos of people trashing police cars, and you could probably charge a few people for doing that, and, you know, rather than just protesting. So, you know, there's just tactics that the police will do. So if you're on the front lines and you're being that police liaison and you're at a march, you know, and the cop's like, yeah, you can go through this line, no problem. You know, just keep in mind, just, I don't know. Lie. So that brings, one of the tips that I was going to share, but, you know, I have other ones, is it's filming at protests. So we used to like live stream everything. And that is still a tendency to just like go and share, especially for people who can't be at protests. Not everyone can get into the streets, but they want to feel what it's like. We want evidence of the numbers there, the signs. You know, there's been infiltrators like, you know, standing in the middle of giving the Elon salute, and then someone snaps a photo and it's like, see, you guys are all anti-Semitic. Side note, I love how it's the anti-Semitic left is the only people who give a fuck that he gave a Hitler salute. Anyway. Yeah. So, but I think the consensus now that I'm seeing put out by a lot of groups that are frontline in the class war here is not to live stream our comrades anymore. Yep. And
that I can speak on because actually I've gone through.
Joe, I think I've been talking for 10 minutes straight. Take it away, Joe.
I can take a little bit on that one because having gone to so many protests and whatnot, there is a huge difference in regards to recording and streaming. Now, if you ever see me at events, usually pretty much what you see now, except there's a backpack and a camera constantly here, as well as I'll be taking photos and doing all sorts of other stuff. I used to do some live streaming at some of the events, particularly when I was starting to do a lot of things. It was Tupac back in the day. And now we discourage live streaming unless you know what you're doing. And a good example of somebody who's very, very good at that is my friend Dina, who will do some live stream, but she's very conscious on the camera and she makes sure it's firing forward, particularly when it's a protest, counter protest situation. It is constantly on, you know, on the fascist people who are protesting the events. so that we're watching, seeing what they're doing, and capturing everything there. Now, live streaming is one thing, but it's if you're live stream, you don't really have control over it. Recording, on the other hand, you do. And so I got mine that's constantly recording, and people ask me as to why. I said the most important thing and the reason why I'm constantly recording is anything that needs to be recorded will occur 5 seconds before I'm able to hit the start record button. It's always sort of real quick. If you ever see something that occurs, no matter maybe a car accident or anything else, it happens so fast that you don't have time to react. It's already too late by that point. So I try to make sure it's always there so I can capture anything that's going on, and then if need to, we can turn it into clip or whatever. Um, so and a good example of where we're able to get some of that video. Again, when we were in Toronto one time during the Chris Elson, Dina wasn't live streaming then because nobody knew we were there, and she was constantly recording. And one of the things she was able to capture was 2 people kicking the defenders at the wall, at the box that they were preventing them going down the street. And so we were able to show this and identify them, and then say they're saying that they're being attacked, and here they are just coming straight up to the wall and start kicking people violently. So it is important to be constantly recording because you want to record all sorts of things. You want to record the events. You want to record aggression by the right wing. You also want to record the police at all times, especially as things are being done. Because and especially if somebody's getting arrested, record the entire thing. Some people get nervous about doing it, and police will try to intimidate you, saying you're not allowed to record. It's bullshit. It's a lie. Record it, because right now they're also trying to slap on charges of resisting arrest, and your recording might be able to get that charge dismissed and question the police.
That is very common. Yeah.
Yeah.
Resisting arrest, defying police orders, and assaulting a police officer. Assaulting a police officer is almost standard now in Toronto. I know Ottawa's experienced the same thing. So that's like pushing up against the police who have like basically forced you into a corner. But other tips on filming. So let's say you do take a shot that you need to share, blur some faces, as well as remove metadata. One of the ways you can do that, what is metadata? Like, it's like the date and location and all the extra information that's in your image. And the FBI and other authorities have been using this to then charge people, because it's not like, oh, we're just protesting, because they've criminalized all kinds of things now. Disruption. There's all kinds of charges that can be levied against you, even though you think you're protected by the charter. Okay. So you can blur out faces, but then you, on the top of that, take a screenshot of the edited version of the photo and use the screenshot. That will remove the metadata from it. Will still have metadata, but it won't be able to say, yes, this person was in this place at this time. 1, because you've blurred their face, and 2, you have removed the metadata. You can still do that with video, but you're going to have to Google how to do that. But again, your video should still not show the faces of people. So how can you make at the end, I'm going to have another activist tip on how you can make then your comrade's job easier when you show up to protests and keep everybody safe. Before I get there, though, there's a couple actions. Tip a week. Yeah, one. Well, don't worry, we got lots. That I'll hit a few more at the end there. But if you're in Ontario, you should be getting a $200 check from the government. There is a site, www.200check, that's spelled the Canadian way, .ca. I don't know if screen recording removes video metadata. Sorry, I got distracted there by the comment. Someone can Google that and answer it. 200check.ca.
For the same reason, the same way the that your metadata. Now, yeah, video doesn't often have as much metadata, but it can, and absolutely, it does. Screen recording will do the same thing. It will remove the metadata of location and everything else because it's just going to be a screen capture. So yeah, you can do the same thing with an image as you are doing with a video if you do screen capture or screen recordings, for sure.
All right, so thank you for the clarification. So $200check.ca, for folks in Ontario who have the means, they're suggesting this could be a great redistribution of resources. So Doug Ford is trying to bribe you for your vote. He's giving you $200. Now, some people, like my family, we need the money, okay? We need every dollar we can get, but not everybody does. Like millionaires are getting these checks as well, but I'm not going to advocate for means testing at this point. However, if you do find yourself getting this $200 check and it's really no sweat off your back at all, consider giving it to one of the mutual aid groups or coalitions that are listed on the website. One that is there that I would fully vouch for is the York Southwestern Tenants Organization. They operate out of Toronto. They are on rent strike, but they have been also pivotal in building up other tenant unions and teaching folks how to organize their buildings. 30% of people are tenants here in Ontario. It's pretty much the same across Canada. That holds a lot of potential for radicalization and building political consciousness, because that's what happens when you organize with each other, right? You just naturally, people start to come up with solutions that are progressive and they're empowered to do something about it. So there are other organizations on there. I can't vouch for all of them. I've had many, many guests on the show. There's so many people out there that are doing work on very little resources, where your $200 would mean the world to them. And let's say, a few of us did it. Like, you're talking about thousands of dollars really quickly. So consider that, and just as another form of, disruption. Ford, using Ford's tactics against him, right? Because these would be the last organizations that he would want to fund. The last, right? So it would actually be funding the fight against him in a lot of the circumstances on there. So yeah, keep that in mind. We can't always use our money to do the fight, and you can't always, and that's to the other point too, not everybody needs to be recording. If you're an organization that's putting on, definitely you should have someone recording, maybe a couple angles. You can contact folks that work legal support in your city. They often will come and observe from a legal standpoint, as long as they have adequate notice and whatnot. But because there's a role for everybody, even once you get on the street. Off the street there is as well, but yeah, not everyone has to do the recording. I don't have the battery power for that a lot of the time, but definitely keep it on the cops and not anybody else. Another update before I get to that last tip is McDonald's. It's maybe lunchtime for people in Alberta. If you're watching, don't you go to McDonald's. We talked about an Indigo boycott there and an Amazon boycott. There is also a boycott on McDonald's, in case you didn't know. And thanks to that boycott, which is a Palestinian solidarity move, because McDonald's proudly feeds IDF soldiers and brags about it. So thanks to that move, they've lost $7 billion with a B dollars in revenue. Do you have applause on your soundboard? Like, da-da-da, yay!
I do. Where is it? Hang on.
Fancy stuff over there. I've got a blue snowball. But yeah, so this is just... Yay! So, we love it. McDonald's is just one of those, evil empire conglomerates that even if you can cause them a little bit of a headache, it's worth it. But let it be an example to all the other, companies out there that there's all they care about is bottom line, right? So there's financial consequences to that. Thankfully, Starbucks is not doing very well either. Their stocks are down. I don't have the numbers for you, but Loblaws is doing great. If we could just somehow tie them to the genocide, we could bring them down, right? And we could just find some way that they've partnered with an Israeli something. We could then just maybe add them to the BDS list, because God, Galen Weston pisses us all off. But we went on about that a couple weeks ago, charging us too much for groceries. So, do you have any updates that I haven't seen, or do we...
I think you covered
I'm sure I'm
them
missing
all.
a lot of people, but...
Yeah, I think you covered all the ones I could think of. And again, there was a lot that's going on this week, and I'm sure we missed a few things because, again, this was a big week. U.S. made their big change, or just came out full fascist, quite loudly.
Yeah.
And they didn't. It wasn't even subtle. It was just like, here he is. Woo.
Yeah.
And
no,
everything else now going on with the election coming up, foreign interference coming out. Like this is a large, crazy time that it's going to be. I know a lot of us are going to have a hard time trying to keep up with.
Yeah. It's and check on your people, especially
Yes.
folks that will like it feels really personal to them right now. So your trans friends and folks, just you'll know anybody that you're concerned about, reach out. I think we're at a point where maybe we don't stop and look back and assess how we're all doing, because we're gearing up for a fight, folks. Right? Like this is the time that we thought maybe we had more years for. I think that we were going to build. We always like, oh, we're not quite at the political consciousness we need, but it's like, if we don't do something, if we don't behave in a certain way in this moment, then we're going to lose to fascists. And then we're going to will be some sort of underground resistance at that point. That's where we're headed. So just to kind of keep that mentality. And thankfully, I'm seeing a lot of folks online that are doing what we're doing, providing the means to do it. So for the last segment here, I'm going to give activist tip of the week, even though you got two out of this week's episode. I should give shout out to credits because this is from Reclaim Youth Support on Instagram. They put this together it's part of like this 30-day practical and tactical. So if you do hashtag practical and tactical on Instagram, there's like a lot of posts on, a lot of it has to do with like street organizing, in terms of like actions. But the little magazine they've put, zine that they've put together is how to make it harder for cops to do their jobs, right? So perfect. I'm not going to give it all to you. I gave you, we talked about recording. That was one of them. But a way to make your comrade's job easier is to mask up for so many reasons. One, we're in a pandemic, okay? And there's fucking bird flu now in southwestern Ontario. I'm not going to go there. I don't have the capacity for that. Just wear a goddamn mask, okay? Put on a mask. Because you love your comrades and you want to live longer, but also because the police would be taking a million photos. And there's people not listening to this who will be live streaming. And you will get seen, which makes the people around you in danger too. So our very first episode on Blueprints of Disruption was, we keep us safe. And my attitude back then was so poor that I was kind of like, well, my face is out there. I don't care. I'm not doing anything wrong. I don't care if I get arrested. Right? Whatever. But what about the people around me? What about the people who came with me? Right? They will then be identified as coming with me, and I've put them in danger. And then the circles in which I organize, they become in danger too. So mask up, wear a helmet, put some goggles on, considering like if you're going to be in a confrontational rally, like you know them when you go to them, sometimes you don't. But tear gas is a thing. And dressing for the occasion isn't, you're not just advising people, wear comfortable shoes and rain gear. Like we used to do that like 3 years ago. That was like how I prepared people, like dress for the weather. Make sure you bring sunscreen.
Really momming it up.
Yeah. And so now my mom was like, wear thick gloves, right? So you can pick up tear gas canisters if you have to and throw them back. Don't bring a whole lot of you with you. Don't bring your phone if you don't need it. If you do bring it, lock it up. Lock it right the fuck up. And there's other mechanisms you can look up to keep your phone safe. Maybe that'll be its own kind of tip of the week. But like gearing up, wear nondescript clothing. I know you all want to wear that t-shirt that you got printed that is like so you and so in the moment, right? It's like fuck Polyev, or I don't know. It's really witty and it's cute and it's perfect for the weather. Just wear gray. Because black can be hot. Like just wear one solid color, nothing too bright, all from head to toe. Make it so you couldn't even differentiate from one another, would be the ideal. Then nobody can be pulled out. Nobody stands out for identification purposes and for targeting. right? Because it's usually the folks that are kind of standout-ish that are pulled by cops. Cops assume they're organizers. They watch their behavior a bit, and they'll single folks out. So just blend in. It's like that Trolls movie. I've got kids, so blend in, right? Just become your surroundings. You want a backpack, and so you can run, right? This over-the-shoulder stuff or having all this stuff in your hands, please no. You're going to have to run. We've all been having to run since G20. That's not new. I see folks show up at protests, and I'm like, you better hope cops are nice this time, because I don't know how you're getting out of here quickly. And am I missing anybody? Like, they've done a great job putting this together. I'll link it to our Blueprints of Disruption story on Instagram as well, if I haven't already. And bring cash and some change, right? Don't be going out there with your credit cards and whatnot. Anticipate being arrested, and we'll tell you how you can prepare for that in next week's Rabble Rants on just being ready to be arrested. It might sound scary, but if you prepare for it and your comrades are all prepared for jail support and you have the legal community set up, it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be a deterrent, because that's what they want it to be, right? So
They want to scare you.
Yeah. I appreciate everybody who tuned in and contributed in the comments. I don't know if we got to all of them, but they played into the episode there, which I enjoy. It felt organic. Folks asked some questions. So we were streaming on the Blueprints of Disruption YouTube channel. So Rabble Rants is the second podcast created by Blueprints of Disruption. It's a venting outlet, a way to deliver Canadian news from an anti-capitalist perspective, from a shit disturber perspective. And so that's what you got today. But we do also produce Blueprints of Disruption, which is strictly interviews for the most part. Sometimes you get me blabbering on, but that's rare. And they are with organizers and activists and people doing different kinds of work like that. Sometimes we have journalists on, like last week, who help us unpack the power systems and how they operate so we can attack them more effectively. And then, I'll alternate between that and people who are like quite literally building networks out of nothing so we can get what we want. And so we can be better prepared for what's coming. So I encourage you folks to really check out the best places are Linktree. Let me drop the Linktree. I have all my links set up here.
Linktree.
Because in there, I've put up our playlist. Like, we have 168 episodes now of Blueprints of Disruption, so it's a lot to go through. So I've created some playlists there. The most recent one I put up was Doug Ford's Reign. So it's about 11 episodes of all the shitty things that Ford has done, as well as interviews with people in Ontario mobilizing against him, how they're doing that and why. There's also a playlist on Palestinian solidarity that dates back before October 7th and talks about what it's like organizing for Palestine here on Turtle Island. One of my favorite ones is we call it Tenant Power. And I have so many episodes on there with so many tenant unions. Just knowing that I have so many interviews with so many tenant unions should be enough to make you smile on this Friday. Like, people are organizing floor by floor, building by building, and then block by block. Like, they are doing it. It's not like this is what we should do. It's happening. It's happening in Ottawa, Vancouver, Toronto, Hamilton, Windsor, everywhere.
All the big urban centers.
For sure. It's catching like wildfire, and I think I've called it the podcast landlords should be worried about. But then there's also Community Organizing 101, which is like the most practical episodes that we have that provide almost like step-by-step guidelines to do what they're doing, build people power or organize your workplace and things like that. So a lot to get through, but don't worry, we'll be back to remind you all of this next Friday at noon Eastern. Next time, bring a friend, and you can also bring a headline. We're happy to unpack some things that maybe we didn't think about that we should be talking about. And I appreciate you all. Make sure you stay disruptive. Thank you, Joe. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Thanks for coming out. Thanks for having me.
Yes. Until next time, folks.